Hi, everybody.
Hello, Val.
Howdy.
I'm just testing out some systems here.
Okay. Do we have a couple minutes yet?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Hi, who's the phone number ending in 402?
402. You're going to get a few visitors to this meeting because we have presenters. So maybe 402 can speak up.
This is Jim. I'm going to need you to go onto my phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just kind of testing, Paul, can you hear us and then speak, say something?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, that works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for HPC admin, there's two admin slides. I know that a few of you have been through the Zoom meeting protocols before, but it's new for Jen and I, given the HPC setting. And I just wanted to make sure that it's HPC. It's the admin are you going to be the ones popping up a slide to let the public know how to provide comment if they want to?
Sorry. Yes. When it's time, let me know and I'll pull up the screen.
Okay.
Okay, we might as well go ahead and get started. I know, so 6 o'clock, my name is Paul Filicetti. We'll call the meeting to order. Normally there's a little introduction that is made. I don't have that text, so we're going to skip that and go right into the roll call. Is that HPC admin staff?
Okay. Jamie Ryan Lockman is absent. Steve Adler,
Is here?
Kathy Bickenhauser,
Here.
Paul Felicity,
Here.
Bruce Harrelson is absent. James McDonald,
Oh, you're muted, Jim.
He's here.
You need to put me on the phone, under the phone 02. Yeah.
The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6 to unmute.
James McDonald is present. Lee Frederiksen,
Here.
Patrick Swart,
Here.
and Kent Watson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So our first order of business for tonight is approval of meeting minutes, and there are two meeting minutes that we're looking at, one from November 4th and one earlier, October 7th. We can do these together or separate. Does anybody care?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Do you wish to skip over the public comment or put it later on the agenda?
I'm just following the agenda. Public comment will come later.
Okay, just want to make clear.
So we'll do these as together. Are there any comments on either of the meeting minutes?
Just as a note,
Yeah.
I couldn't get the agenda or the minutes to open up from the email that I got from the link. Did anybody else have that problem, or is that just my own user error? Okay, it's my own user error.
You have, at least for me, I have to go back to the very first email that she sent out.
Oh,
And-
okay.
It's not the second one, at least for me.
Okay, I was probably going with the second one then. Anyway, go ahead.
So are
Yeah.
there any corrections or additions?
Yes, Paul, this is Kent. No correction or additions. I was just really pleased to have a chance to see the October minutes. I had to bail out of that meeting early, so it was nice to see Emmy's very thoughtful staff report at the end of those minutes, and to have them recorded that way was extremely helpful. I'm sure be a good record for our new members to review what was been going on. So with that, I move approval of both.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kathy. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Everybody get in there. Okay. The minutes from November 4th and October 7th are approved. Thank you. So our next item is public comment. And just before we start that, maybe HPC admin, you want to bring in the screen for public comment numbers to call in, or people who are interested in commenting to call in, please. And I'll read a little script here I've got. It says, thanks for joining our meeting in Zoom. When I call for public comment, please use the raise or lower your hand feature to let me know, and you'll be recognized. The host will allow you to talk, and you'll need to unmute your mic. If you've joined by phone today, you can raise or lower your hand by pressing *9 and mute, and unmute by *6. If you are participating by phone, I'll call you by regarding the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you're participating by computer, I'll call the name on that's listed on the computer. And can anybody tell if anybody's joined? Asking staff for assistance on this one.
I don't see anyone yet.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to move on from there. Thank you. We'll go right into new business then, and introductions from our new board members. I'll turn this over to Laval for a moment.
Hi, everybody. This is Laval Means with the community planning section for our new department called Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. We've combined the efforts of development services with the Housing and Community Development Division, and we're going to, I think, really benefit from the stronger relationship to other aspects of community development. In another avenue of that, engineering and transportation are connected with public works now, but we're all still in our same buildings. So when we are in the buildings, we are still very committed to coordination and communication, and it just connects some dots in some more enriched and different ways. We also, with that move, have a new director, and I don't know if Emmy had mentioned that to you at the last commission meeting, and that is Erin Pahan, and she's actually with us today on this meeting. There she is. And then, you know, there's a lot of new faces on our panel here, or, you know, looking around the screen, around the room. I'm one of them that doesn't typically participate, but one of the faces we're missing this time is Emmy. She's left us, and at the end of November, she left the city and has taken another job. She's going to be working in Washington State, and we already miss her. It's been a long month and a bit. But we wish her well, and I know that she's communicated with you, and you've sent great messages back to her as well. So we're in this interim time, and we're optimistic that that interim time, with help from myself and Jen Gress. Jen is at the meeting today too, and she's going to be really integral in being able to help with communications and connect dots for us. And there's lots of things going on behind the scenes. We'll be talking about that in the staff report piece of business. So I just wanted you to see Jan, welcome Jan, know who it is you're emailing when you are communicating with us. Always please try to keep Jen in the loop, probably more than me, because she will see and pay attention. She's great at detail, and she will bring things to my attention as well. But for this transition, we're going to tag team between her and I. And I've also reached out to many of you for assistance as we need it to. We're not going to be the, the historical knowledge that Emmy had, and we're going to, as needed, we're going to be knocking on your doors in different times to see what you can do to help. So I hope you're patient with us. It also means that some things that we might have been hoping to do, even in these next couple months, will take a little longer. You're probably all used to that from a year of living in a pandemic also, and the amount of patience that you need. Anyway, I think that together we're all going to get through it, and we're going to find some great new vision, some great new support in the Preservation Office, and I'm just really thankful to see so many familiar faces, so much commitment in staying with the commission. And then I want to welcome 2 new commission members. You have with you today Lee Frederiksen and Patrick Swart. What I was going to, between Paul and I think I'm going to hand this back to you, Paul, and you can run through any other introductions, ask the commission members, the new guys, to speak a little bit about themselves or whatever. But thank you, Paul, for giving me a minute. And
Sure.
there'll be a little more to speak to process and, you know, how we're handling some things when we get down to the staff report section.
All right. Thank you, Laval. I would like to hear from you guys, so I'm just going to call on you. Leif, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Leif. I'm a historian. I'm an adjunct at the University of Montana, and I teach public history. I taught a Missoula history class, but my specialty is kind of in urban and environmental history. And I'm from Missoula originally, and I just moved back here a couple of years ago after going to get my PhD. And so I've been teaching here and been working with a few different public history programs here, including Unseen Missoula and some exhibits with my class and stuff. So I'm just excited to be a part of the sort of local history aspects of this commission.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. Patrick, would you like to say a few words, please?
Sure. My name is Patrick. I currently work for the Missoula County Clerk and Recorder's Office. Kind of my interest in the commission grew out of my educational background. I'm actually a recent graduate of the University of Montana, where Leif, of all people, sat on my master's thesis committee. So yeah, I also focus on environmental history and then also the history of agriculture and technology. And I agree that I'm excited to be a part of this local history community and excited to contribute in any way that I can.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard to you as well. Well, we could, as the others on the board, if you guys have a moment, we could just go through and introduce ourselves as well, and I'll call on you. I'm going to start with myself. I unfortunately don't have video. Apologize for that, but my name's Paul Filicetti. I'm an historic preservation architect with A&E Architects here in Missoula, and I've been on the board for a couple of terms and hope to continue on. But my specialty is, and kind of contribution to the board, is a downtown representative and strong interest in historic preservation, restoration, maintaining Missoula's historic resources. How about Kathy? Would you mind going next?
Hello, I'm Kathy Bickenhauser, and I work for the Forest Service here in Missoula, and I'm the lead of the Region 1 Historic Preservation Team, and we focus on the historic buildings that the Forest Service has, with a specialty in log buildings and forest fire lookouts. So we don't necessarily work within Missoula, but we work all over northern Idaho and Montana. And our specialty is, we have a very good wood shop. We do a lot of the hands-on restoration work. And at some point when we can all visit again, I invite both of you to our shop, and we can show you a little bit more of what we do and go from there. And Patrick, have you been to our shop?
I'm
not sure if you have.
I don't
Okay.
believe so, but I appreciate the invite. I would definitely be interested.
Yeah, and same for you, Leif. And did I say your name right?
Yep, you got it right. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to go.
Good.
Yeah, I worked for the Forest Service for like 10 years.
Yeah.
With trail work, so
Yeah,
see that.
and
yeah.
we're right in the center of town. And so, like I said, by all means, stop in.
Great, thank you. Kent, would you mind introduction, please?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, welcome aboard, you guys. This is great. I'm just completing my first year Not quite. I think it was February when I got the appointment. We had one live meeting, and then we went to this format. So I'm a landscape architect. I've been practicing here in Missoula since I came back to the state in 1994, and running my own small shop, mostly working on parks and trails and open space and that kind of thing. And my history background is UC Berkeley, researching on the first master plan for the UC Berkeley campus, and that really that was the bug that bit me about doing historical research. I'm working right now on preparing documentation for the Going to the Sun Road, become a recorded by. I'm the Montana liaison for that, so I'm hoping to get some feedback from the administrator of the Park Service on that, and we'll be able to get that taken care of. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, Ken. Jim.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Finally got the sound working right this time. Last time we couldn't do it, so great. Jim McDonald, I'm a historic preservation person with A&E Design here in Missoula. I'm been on the board since the beginning in 1986, or on the commission, excuse me, and been involved, of course, in many historic preservation projects across Montana and the Northwest through all of our work that we do as A&E Design. Welcome everyone to the first meeting of the new year. Hopefully it'll be a better year than this last one, and we'll at some point be able to get together in the council chambers and not do this through Zoom. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, cheers to that, Jim. Thanks for that. Steve.
Okay, thanks. I'm Steve Adler, architect in Missoula with Adler Architects, and grew up in Missoula. Kind of wanted to get out of this little burg and see the rest of the world, and was lucky enough to come back. So the rest of the world included mainly, let's see, Germany, New Orleans, and Massachusetts. And then found my way back home. I've been here ever since, and have been on the board not nearly as long as Jim, but a couple of good decades plus. And it's always fun to kind of be part of the institutional memory of the board. So that's about it.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. We'll move on to item 5.2 on the agenda, which is a special presentation regarding the 4th Street condos, Reed condos, historic preservation mitigation strategy. And this is for information only. So no motion is required from the board. And we have several people, I believe, representing this. I'll turn it over to Laval to introduce it, and then I think Jeff's going to talk.
Thank you. Actually, Jen is going to do a brief introduction for your projects tonight. Thank you.
Yep. Good evening, board. So as was said, I'll provide you with a little background before this presentation. A set of preservation standards were included as conditions in a development agreement established by City Council in association with approval of the right-of-way vacation at South 4th East and Ronald, essentially related to the Reed Condos project. And these standards were developed at the end of 2019. The design team and their historic preservation consultant used these standards to develop their mitigation strategy with several check-ins with Emmy. The mitigation strategy was reviewed by Emmy prior to her leaving the office, and her memo of concurrence and status of the approach is attached to the agenda item if you're interested in looking at it. The historic preservation documentation and survey is also attached. Jeff McDonald, historic preservation consultant, is here tonight to provide an informational special presentation on the mitigation strategies. So as said, there's no actual requirement from the commission, no action required. And it's also my understanding that Emmy worked with the commission on developing the original preservation standards. So you're seeing those standards being incorporated, kind of brings the project full circle. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McDonald.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, first of all? Yes, okay. Second step is I have a brief PowerPoint to share with you all tonight, which will kind of give a bit of a synopsis to the report, the survey and the documentation that prepared for the 4th Street and the Ronald properties. So I don't know what is going to appear on your screen. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Can you hear me, first of all?
Not yet.
All right. Let me see if I can back out of this. So, could get yeah. All right. So share screen, is that the I want to use for hosting a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perhaps. Let's try that. There
Yes,
it is.
that's the option.
Thanks for bearing with me. It took a second here just to get a handle on this.
Okay, there we go, Jeff.
Right, we're there.
If you want to,
All right.
if you want to change it to, there you go. You got it in the slide mode too. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Work with whatever technology you're able to work with tonight, folks. That sounds fine. Okay, it looks like we're all seeing the same screens then. Okay. Basically, I wanted to just begin by saying this is an absolute pleasure to work with Emmy, the city, and Ken and the folks at MMW on this project. This is a really interesting group of structures. It's one that I had passed by on several occasions, but once I got a chance to get to know them a little better, there's some really fascinating history to the layers of Missoula that I was able to learn about in the scope of working on this project. So kind of in a nutshell, we're looking at 6 structures. And in this slide here, you can see basically the 8 we're talking about is outlined in the yellow here, representing Ronald to the east and Gerald to the west, and you have 4th Street running in front here. It's a really interesting set of structures that appeared on the landscape between, as I've been able to figure it, roughly 1910 and definitely by 1912. And it's representing a really interesting part of the city in its development stage that was kind of spurred by other events that occurred. But until 1900 or so, the south side of what was known as the Missoula River at the time, which is now, of course, the Clark Fork, was rather slow to develop. It was really being prompted by the university taking shape and how the grid system is starting to be in this 1891. Bird's eye image is evident here, and then would lead to further development into that earlier part of the 20th century. But some of the historic images I've been able to find have been really the most interesting and telling, especially this John Donne image from 1903 really helps to illustrate the type of landscape we're dealing with is rather untouched. And there's those famous images of the teepees set up on what is now known as the University of Montana campus. This, of course, is not far from that location and is that south side of the river that is underdeveloped until the event of the 1908 flood. And so this is where the discussion with Kent and Emmy and myself really took shape, and where we started to look at these points of interest and how we should be interpreting this site as these structures that are currently in place are removed and a new design is realized for this landscape. So as we're trying to understand the evolution of this site, we're brought to that point in time of the 1908 flood as that pivotal turning point that brought about an extensive amount of to the south side of the river. So this image shows that view of the aftermath of the '08 flood and looking toward the northern side of the river and really starting to see how, you know, the new bridge transformation is taking shape, but also how the city is really emerging, and how the salt side would now actually follow suit with the establishment of the Milwaukee rail line in 1910. So we're looking at this grouping of 6 structures within those kind of bullet points, if you will, or you know, stopping points along that line, looking at kind of that '08 flood as that transition point that really ushered in a lot of development in the area, and especially leading up to that 1910 development of the rail system, which is what created structures as pretty much speculated at this point. The best images to come out of this research was one that our friends at the Montana Historical Society helped us locate, which shows the newly completed Avenue Bridge, complete with streetcars, bicycles, and some really interesting things going on. What really got us excited was seeing how this group of structures is really starting to take shape here. And just missing is that triplex anchor property, which is what sat right about here. This one really helped us understand when these structures were created, and also why and how they were built of the materials that they were created of. So that became another layer to this investigation, you could say. And it was partly looking at the overall contextual history, partly looking at their design history and their architectural history, of course, but also how this has really contributed to the evolution of neighborhoods. That talk in discussion here, which is, you know, between Ronald and Gerald in the 1902 Sanborn, is out as far as the street blocks would go, but it's really quite vacant, with the exception of this one small shed here. But by 1912, you go over to the same block, very, very different situation that's emerged. There are notations of how the water has been recalibrated following that '08 flood. So that brings us up to the point of where we're looking at these structures now, and they're interesting in how little has changed to this neighborhood since the time when these buildings were created. And so you have, again, they're linked by materials in so much as also their bungalow kind of style, and rather pivotal for what is developing in that neighborhood around this time too, and setting the tone for the kind of structures they would see appearing on the landscape. But what really stood out with this investigation was the materials that were used here. In particular, it was some of the earliest use of Portland cement, quite simply put, and how it could be employed in all these different purposes, from cast materials, from concrete block to a lot of the cast elements of the lintels, and other decorative features that are featured amongst the properties, these pitch face stone creations. Miracle Hollow Block Company were developing patents in those first years of the 20th century when Portland cement literally exploded on the scene and had reached Missoula by way of the rail system and these new materials that were being developed in the Midwest. So for this material to arrive, along with the trade handbooks as to how to manufacture and produce this material, is really quite exceptional. And it was also instructing masons as how to work this new material into fired brick components. So when I see these group of structures joined together by these distinct elements, that has really helped pave the way into the discussion of what are these character defining features and what should we be looking at by way of interpreting these properties. What should we potentially be looking at for salvage, and how might the discussion go forward, again, based on these distinguishing characteristics of these structures. So in conversation with Emmy, we developed more or less a system for looking at These structures broken down to architectural details and contributing components like doors and windows and hardware and miscellaneous features for that distinct purpose of salvage, and also how we might be identifying some of these features in an interpretation going forward. And some of the more neat things that I enjoyed too were, column sections meeting these knee walls, but these fantastic ports, these scupper ports that I have never seen anything like it out here in the West, which allow for cleaning the porch a lot easier and sweeping and pushing water out through these kind of ports here. Little details like that became kind of the of this project. So that brings us now to, once this site is re-envisioned, how will we be remembering the details of that previous age, which very much span the 20th century and into the 21st century? So curiously enough, not steps away from this grouping of structures, and here's that central structure right through the trees, is the abandoned Milwaukee rail line, and how this is now currently interpreted as the Native Prairie extension really does find its remnants here and is quite adjacent to this property, and became part of a more peripheral discussion, but how again, this area is being interpreted and how we might look to in different interpretation strategies going forward. Well, that is kind of where we're at presently, is looking at the stories that these properties can tell, that evolution over time, and looking at those kind of distinguishing characteristics of along the line of time, looking at those points when the rail system was created post flood, and how that really helped to create these structures and the evolution of these neighborhoods in this district of Missoula. And there's my nutshell for you, I guess, folks.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Pleasure. Hope it all came through okay.
Yeah.
I'm flying blindly on this side of the.
Is there anyone else from your group who wants to speak? Just to give them an opportunity. Okay.
I can say a few words if everybody can hear me.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff.
I apologize that there's a little miscommunication on some drawings that I think we can get sent out to the board here, but sorry, but just to maybe describe what our ideas are, and maybe I'm going to ask Jeff to maybe put up his last photograph that was not part of his presentation real quick, and I want to describe what I've got, and then we'll send you some drawings that communicate all this tomorrow morning. So so what our intent is in terms of for sort of the mitigation strategy that we're going to proceed with is that there's a pathway that is going to be along the ditch on the east side of the property, and that's a public path that joins 4th Street with Ronald. And along that path, there's going to be 2 areas of interpretive signage, and one of which and both are going to have sort of a similar design aesthetic, where there's a low wall that is along one side that is sort of the retaining wall against a sort of a steep embankment, and then that continues along. And then there's going to be 2 frames that surround 2 interpretive signs, and those frames are going to be designed to mimic the it looks like I'm not able to get a annotate window here, but you can see these porches on this image right here, where we have the brick columns and on each side, and then there's this sort of white cornice line up above for the roof of the porch. And you can see that on this first building that we're seeing here, we have the brick columns, and then the next building over there, we have these block columns with a similar porch. So what we've decided to do is take those 2 components of the building. We're going to reutilize the brick from these buildings and then create kind of a little cornice line top to these frames, if you will, that will, and then there'll be an interpretive sign in between these frames that where we're going to be working with Jeff, and certainly happy to work with others on that too, in terms of what the content of the interpretive signs are. And Jeff had a pretty good, his description of some of the items that we believe will be on those signs, some of the important historic sort of the timeline, if you will. And the other part of that is that we, along the pathway, along this concrete trail that goes along that edge, there will be imprinted dates in the concrete that refer back to the signs. So for instance, you know, an important date, 1908, the flood, for instance, that would be represented in the sign. It's also represented in the sort of the timeline of the path as you proceed up the path is our idea, so that there's kind of a connection between both the path and the interpretive signs. And we have some sketches, and I apologize that I don't have those with me right now. And we will get those off to you, and certainly happy to review those with people later. But that's the general idea of our sort of mitigation strategy. We also are going to take some of the, not only utilize the brick and the block, but we also are intending to take one of those blocks that Jeff showed that has the imprint of the manufacturer name on it, and to have that prominently displayed in that wall system as well on the trail, so that it all refers back to the history of these buildings. So.
All right, thank you very much, Kent.
All right, thank you.
I'll turn it over to the board if anyone would like to make any comments. It's just one at a time. Kent?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. As I don't know if I'm the resident railroad nut on the board, but I'm one of them certainly, and I'm a great fan of the Milwaukee road, so I'm just delighted to see that the interpretation is going to cover that, because it obviously, I guess the structures were built by the Milwaukee for their personnel. Is that correct?
As I've been able to understand it, that is correct. Yes, and again, it's all contemporaneous with the timeline of the depot being created, the establishment of the rail, the proximity to, you know, that whole rail system, their railroad era structures. I mean, it all adds up to the same equation. But they're fabulous examples of that era, and yeah, again, the materials are really what's entertaining here, just to see that type of juxtaposition between the fired brick and the cast elements. It's really neat. And Kent brought up a really good point too, that was part of the discussion with Emmy of creating a path system that mimics the current sidewalks, which are fabulous. And if you go down to the Gerald corner, it's date stamped 1911. And so having that kind of acts as a segue to moving further down that path, I think is fabulous. And Emmy used the term almost like a table of contents. So the paving stones almost provide a point to then refer to on some of the interpretive signage at the kiosks that Kent was referring to. So we'll look forward to putting that information together.
Oh, that's great to hear, because one of the projects I've worked on, which people are seeing more evidence of as they travel around, is the Milwaukee Path. I worked on the design for that west of Russell, and the bollard that they're now using for their markers all along the trail system was part of our original design. So Milwaukee Road is well covered now in signs and so forth, and to have this added to that sort of palette of historical information, that's really cool. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
Yes, Janet.
Excuse me. Those images are attached to the agenda item. I can share them, or people can look at them later, whatever you prefer.
Does everybody have those on their?
Jen,
okay.
Sorry.
Yep, they're there.
Jen, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Jen.
I just got a link to them sent to me as well. So again, I apologize for the confusion around that, but I can go over those if people would like to sort of review them. Jen, did you share those?
Kent, why don't you go ahead and, yeah, share them, and let's just take a quick look at them, please.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, I seem to be having a little bit of issue here, so give me just one moment, please.
I think Kent was trying to get into it, but either way, somebody can share.
Yeah, I apologize. My link's not working either all of a sudden. Technical difficulties tonight. Aaron, got it.
All right, do you have, can you see them?
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks,
just let me know
Jen.
if you wanted, change a slide or something.
Why don't we just go ahead and go to the next slide? I think we just talked about the buildings there, and this is the image here showing the interpretive signs and the pathway. So you can see there the pathway that runs along the building with this kind of retaining wall that is on the right side as you would go up the path, and then we have the first interpretive sign area is with the block, and then the next sign is with the brick as it goes further up the hill. And you can see how those are designed to be similar in proportion and scale to the existing porches, basically, and then the stamped dates in the concrete. So another image of that. From the top looking down, you see the stamp dates in the concrete there. And basically that was it. So thanks for bringing that up, Jen, and again, apologize for the confusion.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah.
Steve.
I understand that this was not a Habs hair quality documentation project, but I would like to see us get more towards the Habs hair quality of documentation. But what I'd like that to go towards is making this history more accessible. And so if we can get kind of better documentation, better visual documentation, and basically get it online, get it out to where it's accessible to people and accessible to tenants. I'd like to see that some form of this be able to be a little more public, so that people know what was there and it's easier to access what was there. I think we're partway there. I'd like for kind of us as a board, as an organization, to see what we can do about improving that. And we can use this and a few other projects as examples, I think.
Thank you. Anyone else for comments? Okay. Jeff, I just want to jump in and say I really appreciate all the information you pulled together. It was pretty intriguing to look through this document and see the level of detail you were able to gather, you and MMW. So I really just want to say thank you for providing that. It's pretty cool information. So
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
all right, we're going to move on. Thank you. You guys are welcome to hang out, or if you want to drop off, you're welcome to do that as well.
And just one comment. I'm going to have to drop out about 7 o'clock or so, but I'll try checking back as best I can in the meantime.
All right. Thank you, Steve. All right, we're going to move on to some old business now, and the next item on our agenda is item 6.1, informational presentation, preliminary plans for the proposed adaptive reuse of 903 South 1st Street West. And again, This is for information only to the board, and no motion is required. So with that, I'm going to let Laval introduce it a little bit.
I'm going to take that introduction for you.
Thanks, Jen.
So in April of 2020, Emmy provided a memo in collaboration with the HPC stating that this property qualifies as a local historic resource, making it eligible for consideration as an adaptive reuse overlay. As a local resource and in conjunction with a potential adaptive reuse overlay, work being done on this property will be subject to historic preservation permit review process in advance of issuing a building permit. So while the review and consideration of the AR zoning overlay rests with the planning board and ultimately the city council, Mike Morgan, the project designer and property owner, has come to the HPC for early pre-design guidance since he needs a preservation permit for final building design in the end. If the AR zoning is approved, then the commission will review the design and consider a preservation permit based on the criteria found in Title 20. The criteria rests heavily on the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation as it pertains to the proposed addition, and Secretary of Interior standards for preservation pertaining to the Bissenger Warehouse specifically. So Mr. Morgan provided an overview of the project at the November 4th HPC meeting, where members provided input verbally and then later in written comment. Mr. Morgan has revised the plans and is back for a second look from HPC. While this is not a technical review of a preservation permit, Mr. Morgan is seeking as specific guidance as possible from the group at this time, just to help ensure the design works with the guidance set out in the Secretary of Interior standards and the intent of it being an adaptive reuse. So I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Morgan.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. It's good to see you all again. Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Jen, for that intro. That helps a lot. It saves me a lot of having to think of what to say there. You did a great job for me. Let's see here. I think what I'm going to do is jump into some imagery first of all, just to get you acquainted again. But I might emphasize first that our objective is to make sure that how we're moving forward is going to meet an approval, if I may say so that way, approval by the Historic Preservation Committee that we can count on, I guess is what I'm trying to say, or at least be close to where we know we're going to get there, because our first step or our next step is to go to City Council and get an approval, hopefully for an adaptive reuse. And then after that, if that's approved, then we proceed toward building permits. And part of that process is when, my understanding is when HPC comes back in and reviews for officially for a vote of approval, I believe. And so there's a lot of process before we get to that point. So that's why I find it very, very important. I appreciate your time in advance. That I know this isn't this is just an informative gathering meeting, but that's my objective. I hope to get with you is that we can work together to see if we're on track to be able to do that. So we're not getting through that AR process and then getting a roadblock. That would be not very fun. So that's what this objective of this meeting mostly is. And I appreciate just your direct input as much as you can. That's what I'm looking for. If you have something critical to say, then I'm all for that. You're not going to hurt my feelings. So that's what we want to try to see if we can get to. And I appreciate your input in advance. So I think I'm going to screen share and I'll just show you a few images. I think you've seen it before. And then Steve, you made some good points before that I'd like to have addressed maybe more specifically with what you had to say, because I thought that was good. And our last meeting, I found some really helpful input that all of you gave, and that drove this design we have now. And I'll say also now that I do have some other concepts that available that I could be sharing tonight. If it helps if we go down that road. I was trying to be as prepared as I could for this time here that we have. So I'm not trying to be as productive as I can with you. So I'm going to screen share here. And let's see, that's the one, I believe. Okay. Are you seeing yeah, you're seeing a screen now with the image, right? Rendering? Yes. Okay. And I think you've seen these before, right, everybody? Or maybe the new committee members haven't, but I'll just walk you through a few images first. And I have a brief animation also, just so you get a general overall shot of this concept. So the Bissenger Warehouse is this building portion here, which is existing. Okay, let me back up. Here it is today. It's in a bit of it's been neglected. It was owned by a private owner for decades, and we're excited to bring this thing back to life and give it some integrity again. It's got a purple haze color on it right now, paint. We want us to take that off as carefully as we can and bring this back to life. And what we're proposing is really virtually not changing this structure, this building. It's in actually pretty darn good original condition. It's not been manipulated or altered, which is really exciting to me. There's been an addition over here that's not original. We propose to take that off. So, and also let me point out that up here, this is a penthouse that houses mechanics for a freight elevator that's original inside this building, and it still operates, and it's pretty cool. And so we wish to preserve that, and you're going to see that in some of our renderings also. Just kind of keep that in mind. So now so here is the Bissenger Warehouse, the exact same openings, nothing altered there, and the paint taken off of the bricks, and the Missoula brick brought back as originally as it was originally built. The garage that I mentioned was added on to late here. When we remove this, it opens up this entire depth of the side of this Bissenger Warehouse to be visible again like it was originally by having this transparent gallery that we'd enter into. And this was the result of our last meeting. I think Emmy brought that up, and I thought it was fantastic. And so now that transparency and that full depth of that building can be seen, which I'm really excited about that. The rest of this project is all new, and it's all about the adaptive reuse portion of development. And it's a mixture of commercial, office, manufacturing, and residential units. So now I'll just keep going, but I'm going to talk mostly, because that's what we're here for, is about the warehouse. The warehouse is not reinforced, and it's very vulnerable to lateral seismic loads, and it needs help. Otherwise, it's not going to be safely protected. And so that concept was part of what drove this whole project too, is this rooftop addition to the top is actually a projection of a steel moment frame that would need to go down through the warehouse next to a structural grid of timber columns and beams inside of the building that we would not remove at all. But we need to take this is the way I see to least impact the building, is take a steel beam down next to the post, have it exposed, but all the rest of the structure remains exposed also. And this steel structure is also horizontal members that goes out to the exterior to support the exterior walls, so they have some seismic help. But all that's concealed above the existing timber structure that's there now. with a new floor system and roof system floating on top of the whole building. So nothing is altered about the interior aesthetic of the building now, which is rough sawn for decking on the ceiling and timbers. So that's what drove that. And then also Steve brought this up and I appreciate it. And there's a story why I'm going to get into this subterranean court in front here. And there's a story of why this came about. I'm going to drag a picture over here. In the basement is a full depth basement with, these are about 16 by 14 foot or inch old growth timbers inside of here. There's concrete posts that are below the timber post on the main level. And there's rough sawn old growth fir lumber and 2 layers of 2-inch actual rough sawn decking on top, and all that's in pristine condition. The reason you can see inside of here, there's a light on inside here. Otherwise, it is very dark inside of there because there's no natural light. Here's another picture down there. This is when these pictures were taken before we purchased the building, and there was a lot of stuff down there. But this is how dark it is without light, just to give you that. And so just to the right of this picture is where the exterior wall is. Here, this concrete wall. And this basement has been long forgotten because there's nothing you can do with it, because there's no way to get out of it. Other than there's a stair right here that's not close to meeting code. It's, you know, it was a functional stair for storage. All this basement was a storage since the Bissenger Warehouse closed. And so the only way to utilize this space, which if we don't utilize it, it's going to continue to remain forgotten. And it's, what good is that? I just don't see that as being, expressing the full extent of what this warehouse is. So how can we use that space and let it be something again? Well, we can do that by opening up this end of this wall here and putting some light down there. And it also allows us to meet code to have egress so we can safely get somebody out of the basement. The other reason why we did this is this warehouse, the brick warehouse and the block warehouse, the entire warehouse, the sewer service on this is still the original cesspool, which isn't functioning anymore. It's been long non-functional. It kind of works, but it needs cleaned up, and it's right here. And so we need to dig this out and clean that up. Well, if we're digging it out, maybe that creates an opportunity to allow us to let this warehouse express itself that it does have a basement and use it. So that's really that's the reason. I know it's not how it was originally presented. I understand. Does that mean it hurts its integrity or not hurts its integrity? I guess it's a matter of interpreting what the Secretary of Interior standards say about that, but I don't think so. I think it strengthens its integrity by bringing to life the basement. Otherwise, the basement will remain what it is, forgotten and lifeless, really. All you can use it for is, I don't even know if you can use it for storage. There's no way out. That's not safe. So that's my idea for that. And then the front of the building, again, if I go back to that picture, there's a door here that isn't original, and this entry landing is not original, and there's a plywood ramp that goes up right here. None of that's original. I don't know what the original was. There's no photographic evidence for us to know what that was, but I'd like to let this door stay as a door. And so our attempt is to put a door that's maybe a little more appropriate than the steel solid door that got put in later, and have a deck. And what that deck is exactly, I'd love your input on, because what we'd want to do is do our best to try to best complement the character of the historic building without it being something inappropriate. And I have another version of what that deck's about and what this courtyard is about, the sunken courtyard. But maybe I'd like your input and we can interact with that, and I can show you some other examples possibly. I just wanted to kind of get into those because I know those are a couple of issues that I think we're gonna hear about. So I just wanted to bring that up for you. So now, real quickly here, I'm just going to bring up an animation so you can get a better sense of this whole project. Just takes about 15 seconds and then it'll be done. So bear with me 1 second here, okay? Let my Caleb here that works with us is here to help me do that because I need a little technical assistance. Okay, so there it goes. And so we're spinning around toward now the Bitterroot Branch Trail. And we're seeing the side of the warehouse, the bottom right, brick warehouse. Behind it is a block warehouse, which is gray. And the rest of the projects are proposed or is new development. So there you can see how that glass lets you see all the way to the back of the warehouse there. Okay, so that was a quick little animation for you. And there's this view here. You can see that glass transparency lets you see the whole back of the warehouse. There's two openings, original openings that were originally exterior that have been buried in that garage. It wouldn't be exterior with this. We're proposing a glassed in gallery here, which would be a primary entrance, and it would have some artifacts in there and photographs of the history of the era when this was operational originally. And we've been fortunate that Washington Corp, who has ownership in this rail link here, that they have artifacts, and they're happy to give us some, which would be fantastic. And they've offered to put a monument in the along the trail, off the side of the trail. There's originally the rail spurs still in place, and they put a monument there, and we could talk a little bit about the history of the project and that monument, which would be exciting. So I appreciate their offer there. So that's what this gallery would be for. So that's pretty well does it. I'm sure I've forgotten some things I wanted to say, but I think that covers it. This black color here is brick, but it's not the same color, to try not to be matching the brick. But as I read to the Secretary of Interior Standards, maybe that's more appropriate that it is brick that matches that color, and that's great. I have a version of that I can show you. I have some variations about this area here that I can show you if there's concerns about that. So that's about it. I just really now would like to hear your input and what you think, and if we're on our way to maybe being able to have something that we can get to where we get an approval that we know we can move forward with after we get the area rezone. So after that, I'd just like to listen if you don't mind.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mike, for that presentation. Steve, I know you were mentioning you were going to take off here and you've hung in. If you have comments, I'd like you to go ahead and go first here so you can take off if you need. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And I think I mentioned to Mike previously that kind of in a typical approach in looking at the Secretary of the Interior standards and looking at kind of the intent of the ordinance is for the public welfare. And so I know this is not a high style building. I know it's not something that's a showpiece of its own. And I appreciate your effort, Mike, to make it as much of a showpiece as you can. I was more worried about changing the relationship of the front to the street with that sunken garden and egress patio, I guess, because it changes the whole nature of the setting and the context immediately around the building. And I saw that as not being in line with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So that was my main issue there, is just that it's such a radical change in the relationship of the front of the building, or the public side of the building, really, to the streetscape, that I was worried that it was kind of degrading the historic presence by so much going on around the historic, because we've already got a building kind of climbing up over the top with the moment frame that Mike expressed and explained already. So that was my observation, and it's open for interpretation and debate, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments from anyone else on the board, of the commission?
I'm new here, so can you say a little bit more about the history of how, I mean, it was a warehouse, but like how it was used, what other uses it might have had over time, and what aspects of those you're thinking of emphasizing here?
Certainly, I can do that. Yeah, you're getting caught up. That's right. You weren't here the last time, so happy to run you through that. Bissenger Warehouse, we don't know exactly the date that it was built. I haven't been able to find exactly the date. We did a pretty long narrative about the history that we submitted to Emmy, and that should be in the records there at the city. You want to find those. It goes in a lot of great detail that I'll forget a lot of it now. But the Bissinger Warehouse was built right about the time the rail was built, and so it was a fur trading company. They were an offshoot of the Alaska Fur Trading Company, and they were an extremely successful corporation that their central office was in San Francisco, and their main plant of processing was in Troutdale, Oregon, just outside of Portland along the Columbia River. And they had several satellite locations like this one, and they had another one in Billings that's still in place. And that one in Billings, if you look it up, it's kind of fun. They've adaptively reused that into different retail shops. And it's very similar to this one, except the brick is different because probably the local resource in Billings had a different brick than here. Otherwise, it's the same thing. Timbers inside, fur decking, and very simple like this one. This is not an ornamental business center, it never was. And so it was more of a, at the time when this was formed, it was in the county outside of the city limits. The tracks was the city boundary, and it was a mud hole. That's what it was. It was an industrial site. And there was no street, there was no curb, there was nothing. It was just like the last presentation you saw. It was an industrial site, full on. There was no public. They didn't care. It was all about function, and great. That served their needs, and they built this building out of the resources they had surrounding them. And I'm so glad it's still here, because along this Bitterroot branch, and very, very few remaining buildings that are standing that came from that era. They've either burned down or been torn down. And so I feel very blessed that we have this, and I'm excited that we have it. And I'm excited to say that I'm part of it. And it's but that doesn't matter. Okay, about the warehouse. So that's what it was. It was a warehouse for fur trading, and they processed on a small scale furs in this building. traders would come with their animals that were still they're full carcasses with hides on them. They traded a lot of sheep also. They did a lot of sheep hide work. And in the basement, this is a little bit graphic, but if you'd like to hear it, I'd love to tell you this. What I've found out is the freight elevator, they would use that elevator as a tool, not only for taking things up and down, but they have a series, and they're still there, small chains under the elevator. And they would pin the animals on the floor, and they clip these chains to the hides. They cut the hides enough to get them ready. They'd lift the elevator and they'd pull these hides right off like a shirt. And then they had these carcasses left. And where they went, I don't know. But I know that cesspool is plugged up for a darn good reason, because I think a lot of water was going through there and cleaning, and off it went. And that's why I need to clean that up. Luckily, it was a long time ago, so it's not like a chemical. I don't expect a chemical cleanup scenario, but it needs cleaned out of there. And I expect that's what happened, because in Troutdale, that's what they did, a huge scale. And I won't go into all that history, but that's how they operated. And they operated, I don't know when this closed down, but a long time ago when the fur trading went out. And since then it's been used as it was a mercantile distribution for a while. It had some coolers in there. It's been a small scale motorcycle repair shop in that garage that was added on. But mostly it's just been storage since then. I think it's been in one family for several decades before we obtained it. But that was the original operation, and it was on the tracks for a reason. That rail spur was heavily used. And along the side are still the freight doors, not the doors, but the opening. So they used the spur, and it was full on operation. It was pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? Kathy?
So I was looking at the black and white drawing, the plan view, and I'm looking on the Bitterroot Trail side where you have an office. And I was wondering, could that incorporate a little bit of a glass wall, much like where you can see into the warehouse on the other side, to show a difference between old and new? Or maybe I do see there's a little bit of a setback, or maybe a bit more of a setback, just to differentiate from old and new.
Okay, let me pull up a shot and see if I can follow you here. One sec here. Where'd that go? Okay. Yeah, no, I'm gonna.
And you might have a glass wall there. I can't quite see for certain.
Which one is it? Okay, do you mean like in here between this brick warehouse
Yeah.
and block warehouse?
So there's the brick warehouse and the block warehouse, and then farther back, the office.
Okay, yes, I see. You're looking at that site plan, floor plan, okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea. I'm going to pull up that site plan so everybody can see what you're saying. One sec here. I think I am anyway. Or is it faster? Jen, do you have those documents I sent you yesterday or day before with that site plan? Are you able to pull that up by chance?
Yeah, it was one of our attachments.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see what I can do for you here. Which one did you want to look at exactly? The floor plan?
Yes.
Okay, you'll have to stop sharing.
Okay. Excuse me. See here. Stop share. Okay.
How's that?
Yeah, excellent. Okay. And then if you go
Can
down,
you scroll down?
yeah, scroll down on the drawing a little more.
I will try. My PDF has not been working real well, but let's see what we can do here. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. So there you go. I see what you say, Kathy, where it says office 700 square feet and manufacturing in F. That's the original block warehouse, or not original, it's added on later after the brick warehouse. But where we're adding on there, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. Great idea. I'll make some note on that, okay?
Yeah, this is Kent.
Yes, Kent.
I'm just curious as to about the deck, what you see as a use for that, because my first reaction is it looks so out of place, but I wonder if there's something specific that you had in mind for it, because it doesn't relate well either to the plaza, the nice plaza you have in front of the main entrance to the building, or the elevation of what I'm seeing from the perspectives that you have. It seems to be like maybe 2 or 3 feet above that elevation, but it's separate. And I'm not sure what the what you had in mind for the use of that deck.
It's here. You're seeing my screen again, right?
No, the deck that protrudes out from the original building there. Yeah.
Yes. I've changed a little bit about that deck in this courtyard since this. And I think the only way to best describe it is to show you another rendering, and I have it ready to do that. Okay, so one second. Do you mind if I pull that up for you?
Go ahead.
So this is a little bit of difference, and not just that area. I'll just go right into the deck and the courtyard first, but there's some other stuff you've probably seen that's different. Let's see. That's better. So this deck is, it's squared off and not angular like the other one was, first of all, more like the building. And it has steps coming down into the plaza, more like an entry, which is what it ought to be, I believe. What do you think, Kent?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. It really does. And yeah, because it looked to me like it was begging to have something like that happen. So I wasn't sure which.
Yeah, yeah. And the guardrail. Sorry.
In that square design, does that still have the sunken courtyard? I like the square design.
I'll show you that. So under the deck, under the deck is not open like it was before. It's got a, right? Yeah. Let me get you a better view of that. There you go. So this looking down, it helps a little bit. Under this deck has got concrete to continue the same line of concrete that's there now, the concrete foundation. And it's not open below it like it was before. This courtyard, forgive me, it's not as, this isn't a refined, finalized courtyard, but it's smaller. So if I, where's that other view? This one. If you, I'll try to zoom in on this a little bit more here. What happened? There we go. Now, how do I move? Oh yeah. Excuse me, guys, a second. So concrete and not open below it. The courtyard is smaller. And a big reason why it's smaller is right where this wall is, where the property line is, and it hits that corner of the building right there. And so the existing deck is it's projecting into the city right away. And to do a deck there, I will have to request, which you can do, a projection permit, I think it's called, to extend out into the right of way, public property. So there's a little bit of problem solving there. It may not allow this basement to go down like this. It's going out underneath, and then you come out like this instead of how the wall goes through now. And I don't know if everybody likes that or not. You know, all that little detail can change around, but I think the main thing is it's squared off like that building, which is probably more appropriate, and there's steps going down to be an entrance still like it originally was. This was the front office of the warehouse originally. And that porch, whatever it was, I'm sure was the entrance to come in to do business versus the manufacturing warehouse part of the back. What do you think about all that?
I'd like the squared off design better.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. And go ahead, sorry.
Oddly, I like the upper part with not as much glass as in your original one, my opinion.
Yeah, I did that because I think I was expecting that might be needed, because I really like the other version a lot, but you've probably seen other modern additions of old brick historical buildings, but I bet they're not registered buildings though. Otherwise, how could they do that? I don't think they could. I like it, but you can't do both, I don't think, and follow the guidelines. This is attempting to follow the guidelines more and scale back and be more cohesive with the character of the warehouse, like what I see the guidelines saying. And I think it helps scale itself up and down with the other new development probably better. It's set back more than the other version. And this isn't brick because it just can't physically do it because the brick is too heavy. But it's rusted metal to have a textural color, very similar texture to it. But
it also seems to highlight the elevator.
That's correct.
A little bit more.
Very good, Kathy. Thank you. That's why I brought that picture up originally. That elevator penthouse is preserved and expressed. There it is. And we're putting a deck on top of it. And so I agree. I think it's more character sensitive, I guess, right?
Paul, could I comment?
Yeah, please, Jim, go ahead.
I guess I agree with Steve on that area that's done. If you could leave that up there, that leave that one up. Yes, thank you. I agree that I don't particularly like the way that's dug out there. I like the square deck. I like the reusing the door and all that. That's fine, even though it wasn't original, but it works very well. But I wonder if to bring light into the basement, if you could do something else. If you go to the track side here, you have that large area of glass right there in the middle. What if you opened up the floor more? I mean, it takes away space, I realize that, but open it up more and allow light to filter down through that into the basement without having that whole dugout area. And I know that it doesn't take care of your egress problem, but I think there's ways to find where maybe an egress could come out of it into the structure behind or something like that within that space that's behind there, and not create that lower space on the street side of the project.
Yeah, I understand. And there is an opportunity to do that. And inside the warehouse, I won't bother trying to pull up pictures, but there's next to the freight elevator, I believe they had 2 freight elevators originally going, because there's a grid within the floor system that doesn't have the same decking. And I can see a steel frame there where it looks the same as a freight elevator. So that could easily come out without even having to harm any of the wood that's in place. And it would let light in. The only downside, I guess, is what's it good for down there still, really? And that's outside of historic preservation. I know I'm going outside of that. I'm getting into more about how can you use the space, and I think I could find another way out of it with a stair, but I don't know what you can do down there. You know what? That's all. I don't know if that's enough to make that succeed in the basement. You know, any input there? I highly value your input there, Jim. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I think and it's probably going to take a pretty large area, large opening in the floor to make it work properly. So you're going to lose some space. I agree with that. But I think it's going to give you a better feeling of opening down in the basement. If you, trying to think of a good example where, you know, there's just an opening in the floor that allows light to filter down in, and it can do that very well and still give you probably the same effect as the glass that you have on the street side there. It's just a matter of, you know, how you detail that and how you make it work so that it can bring that light down in.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something. I just have a problem with that whole dugout area, I guess.
Yeah, I understand that. I think I'm thinking about the practicality of it's 3,000 square feet, the warehouse floor, and this really isn't an argument. I'm just talking with you and out loud. And then the basement, 3,000 square feet. So if it's open to each other, the floor levels, that means somebody needs 6,000 square feet. Who is that? You see what I mean? You can't, and I guess if you glassed in the basement so that light well was securely separate, you know, but you know, this is going to be an adaptive reuse, change of use from a manufacturing warehouse to office space, or that's about all we can do. We can't do retail or anything like that because we don't have enough parking capacity. So just a practicality of how to let that space succeed by actually having a need that is 6,000 square feet worth of space. You see what I mean? And that's outside of historic preservation. I understand. I guess I'm just sharing the story and what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, Is this going to be retail space in this area? Is that what you're?
Office space, like office.
Yeah. I think with an office, you have a little more flexibility. You can create it, and even to bring areas down into the lower level. If you look, I'm trying to figure out where I saw a building just recently that opens down more into the lower area, and I can't think of it right now. But it actually works pretty nice and allows a lot of nice light to filter down in there, and so it isn't real dark. I know there's still problems on the other side where it's maybe dark towards I forgot my directions here, but the opposite side there that allows, probably is going to be a little darker, but I don't know. It's just something I think to explore a little bit and see what.
Okay. So I guess to get to the bottom line of that, I think if we want to get the objective again here tonight is to see what we might need to do to seek, obviously, what we're getting to an approval level at a later date. Is that what it will take? I guess that's. I'll just get down to that question, right? If you don't mind, is that what it needs? Do you think, or?
Yeah, I just think with the change on the top of the roof and that it's really affecting the building a lot more than it probably needs to be, and so by limiting at least that lower area there, it brings back more of the character of the warehouse, the brick warehouse especially, and kind of keeps that whole face a little more in as far as integrity of the original structure.
Very good. Thank you.
This is Paul, and Jim, thank you for those comments. I would agree with that, just in terms of like as a pedestrian, your exposure or your relationship with that building is really, I'm going to call it the north elevation, where the sidewalk is there, I believe, is really to the north. So as you walk by there, having that relationship, strengthening that relationship in a historic context will make the rest of the building, I think, be less important. So it kind of does what the Secretary of Interior standards are suggesting, that, those parts can be different and then kind of fade back and or step back. And I think you've achieved all those. I really like the idea of Jim's suggestion of moving that atrium glass opening into the basement into the interior of the building. And just as a suggestion, perhaps that is something you could integrate into the stairwell. So it is an egress stair, and for 2,000-3,000 square foot spaces are joined together by this interior stair that make it an event as you walk through the space or something. A tech company is what you want in there.
Yeah, somebody needs 6,000 square feet. I think of mercantiles, if it could be retail, you see that a lot. It's a mercantile store where they sell clothes or outdoor gear, kind of like the trail just down the road here on Front Street. But we can't do that here. We don't have enough parking for that kind of thing, unfortunately. But that would be really great. But I understand. I think we can get something to work like that. Okay.
I will say, and I agree with Kathy and the other comments in terms of the deck that faces towards the north, making that a rectangle or a square, it's just kind of squaring that out. Really, I like that much better. I think that, again, it kind of ties in architecturally with that historic fabric, rather than the angles that we saw previously.
Good, thank you.
And I also agree to that, yes.
Okay. Is the brick matching color of this new part here? Any opinion there? Should it be matching, or should it be black or something different so it's not trying to be the same like this one was? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, this is Jim again. I think you can have part of that because you have that separation of the glass between the bricks, and it just picks up a color that kind of that works well with the original structure. If you can get back to that color by taking all the paint off, I'm a little nervous about that, whether you're going to be able to get totally back to that color. But anyway, yeah, I don't have any problem with that because of the separation. If it was run right up to the building, then that'd be a whole different story.
Okay, thank you. Good. Okay.
Yeah, I think your brick textures are also going to show. And I think to add on to what Jim said, with your effort to take off the paint, it's not going to look like new brick because, I mean, that's probably that really soft brick. So you will have that separation of historic brick, glass, and then new brick.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use Missoula brick on a new building. That stuff's not very good. Sure is pretty though. Okay.
All right. Are there any other comments from committee members? Okay. Hearing none, we can wrap this up.
Okay.
I just want to say, Mike, thank you very much for taking the time to walk us through that and hearing our comments. So thank you very much.
Can I finish with
Thank you.
one quick question here, just to make sure I'm on? What do you think? Am I on track, or are we okay? Do you think? If you don't think so, I'd sure like to hear now. But if you think we're looking pretty good with this version you see now, what do you think here? Do you think we're going to be okay with going through and moving forward when we go toward our building permit approval or application? I mean, and then HPC's review at that time. What do you all think?
I can't speak for everybody on the board, but I will say that in terms of, and I think I sent you an email on this, one of the things that the SOI standards really does talk about is that retention of historic materials, and because they really establish that sense of scale and proportion to the architecture and the character, because they are a character defining feature. So I would say that as you look at the historic building, particularly the north and east elevations, that as you think about those and changing the windows or altering the windows, I would push for preservation and restoration of those windows and window openings, window materials, sills, lintels, and really downplay any new feature that is added to that.
In the warehouse itself, we're talking about.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And you can see where we have brick and this here, we're trying to play with that same proportion of panes, but where it's new, it's different. So it's, Is that okay, everybody? You think? Okay. Okay. Well, I think it sounds like we're going to be okay. We're moving along in the right direction with your input tonight. Yeah, correct? What do you think? Think so? Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again very much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
This is Lavelle. Can I just, we're trying to kind of keep a good sense of summary out of it all. And I just wanted to get a clarification from you all. Sounds like your preference for the space above the warehouse, moving towards the solid walls with the punched windows is better than the glass configuration. Is that right?
It is for me. That's my opinion. I can't speak for anybody else.
And I would say from my perspective, what I like about this version that Mike's showing right now is that it pushes that element further back. Mm-hmm. So you get to see that top of that elevator. So I would say my preference would be that component of that elevator remains visible, because that's really the pedestrian experience. If somebody walks down the street, they're looking up, it's like, oh, they see the historic building, and they can still see that relationship to what that was. I'm not sure about the deck on it. You have to warm up to that, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the idea of visiting more glass behind the warehouse on the trail that Kathy had mentioned earlier. And
Or a small setback, and I mean, that's just my opinion.
And keep working on the front facade where the daylighting is, to look for another alternative to meet your ideas on lighting, and preferably to stay away from the dugout idea entirely, to be able to better comply with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fair.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again, Mike, very much.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, we'll move on. Our next item is number 6.2, Historic Covenants Subcommittee update. And I will say that Jamie is the chair of this subcommittee, and without her here, I can imagine that and I'm on that subcommittee, we have not done anything. So it's still sitting out there. I wait till Jamie comes back next month, and we can get a better download of what's going on. Lavelle, do you have anything you'd like to add there?
I don't. I think that, also for the benefit of new commission members, maybe next meeting with Jamie present, she could talk a little bit about what the committee is. If you're patient,
Sure,
we'll hear from Jamie.
Yep. Okay, and then we'll move on to item 6.3, Preservation Planning Subcommittee update. And there are several of us who are on that subcommittee. This was a subcommittee that was Emmy recognized before she left that the Missoula Historic Preservation Plan is pretty dated or out of date and needs to be re-looked at. So she was starting to organize her thoughts around developing a preservation plan for the city of Missoula. And then with her leave, I'm on that committee. I believe Jim is, and I think Steve is as well, and Kent is. And I would recommend that, just from my opinion, I suggest this, that we wait until our new HPO officer is on board to delve into this again, because I think it really is going to take their level of participation to bring it forward. And at that time, I think we reorganize our subcommittee, because now with our new members, there may be others who would like to join. If anybody, I'll just throw that out there. No motion is required, just for discussion.
Sounds good.
Yep, sounds good, Paul.
Thank you, Jim. All right. Next item is item 6.4. For those of you who are new, we usually talk about building watch, and this is where we just look at or encourage everyone on the committee to keep an eye out for buildings around town that may be vacant, may have sold recently, or maybe some alterations going on them, or whatever you think, and bring it to the board so we can all be aware of what others are seeing out there, changes in Missoula's historic fabric that would be relevant to this committee in some way. So if anybody has anything they'd like to talk about here on Building Watch, please jump in. Okay, not much out there. All right. Well, please keep an eye out and think about that as you walk around, moving around downtown or anywhere you are in Missoula. And if you see a historic building undergoing change, or it's vacant or recently sold, that's a great time to bring it forward to this committee. Moving on then, item number 7, Historic Preservation Officer Staff Report and Project Notification. I think that's Laval now.
Yes, Thank you. We attached a staff report to the agenda and listed out some of the activities that transitioned from Emmy to Jen and I in the last month and a half or so. But what I was going to do is just read off some of the general topics, the key topics up there, and included in that are a few items that should result in some discussion with you as well. So first off, just in transition, the fact that Emmy is no longer with us, we are in the process of recruiting a new historic preservation officer. And we are going through initial round of screening right now. In the past, we have included a preservation commission member as part of the interview process. So we would like to do that again. I'm hoping it's something that we can move into an interviewing stage. It's still in the month of January. I don't know how, it's us working with HR also, but the wheels are moving, and I just want you to know that. And we're really excited that there is a pool to look at. And in with that comes the fact that, we would really benefit from having a commission member on the interview committee. So that's one of the things I'd like you to kind of come back to after I mention some of these other items. The February HPC meeting, we will need to have a meeting in February. It's for a few items. One of the things you could do in that February meeting is to vote on a new chair and vice chair. So be thinking about that. The other thing that is related to the commission specifically is that as you see today, we finally have some new commission members. We did go through a lengthy stall, I guess you could say, in getting to the interview process through the council. I'm happy that they jump-started it again and we were able to complete that process for you two, Leif and Patrick. But we are still needing one more commission member. And I talked with the city clerk today even, and she said, yep, we're ready to start going on advertising for that. I've actually fielded a few questions about interest too. So I'm really hopeful that going through the next round of recruitment, we just need one person. And it is, I think it's going to be the second alternate. And so that will get our, probably in the next few months, we'll have the full contingency of commission and alternates in place. I did communicate with Bruce Haraldson, and it sounded like he was even going to try to make it today. Sometimes what we do when we are operating without a full contingency is we do ask the a commission member that's still around to still participate until that position is filled. So he can do that. He could join us if he wants. But again, I'm hoping that it's really only for a couple months. So say hi to Bruce and thank you to Bruce. Tell him we're recruiting again if he'd like to come on board. The other thing is that we do have another cycle of the CLG certified local government grant application process to work on. That's something that Jen is going to be diving into in these next few weeks. And it does require holding a meeting, an HPC meeting, to go over the application material or something like that. So that's one of the other reasons why we have to meet in February. The deadline for submitting the grant application is mid-February. So that is something we'll be working on. The other item that is out there for the February agenda was something we were going to have on tonight's agenda. And I think I'm kind of glad it moved to another night because it's been a long night for you all. And that is a discussion about the potential future uses around the post-hospital Fort Missoula site. And there's a design planning team that the property owner is working with, and they want to come to the HPC for some early discussion about ideas and your knowledge about the building specific and, you know, awareness around the Fort Missoula overlay historic district. So that is supposed to be for the February meeting. Associated with the February meeting is the fact that it is still going to have to be on a Wednesday due to the conflicts that are happening around the city council. But it sounded like there's a potential we can move back to Thursdays after February. So I apologize for any confusion that there's been on, is this a Wednesday or a Thursday? We need to do one more Wednesday, beginning of February. And then I think we're on board for moving back to Thursdays, but I'll keep checking in with admin staff and others on that scheduling. So mark that on your calendar. It'll be that first Wednesday in February. One other thing two things I want to mention. One is noted here on the staff report, and that is beginning of the year, you usually start to think about how to recognize and, you know, what to do around the Historic Preservation Month. So that's in May. I know there was like maybe quick pivoting in last spring when some efforts were already underway to plan for something in person, and then they had to shift to more virtual things. Have that on your radar. Maybe Paul, you've got some other leads or thoughts on it, but we do try to start brainstorming ways to recognize and what to do. There's some programs in place that might be easily virtual. I'm not sure. I'd love to get your insights. So the last thing that I wanted to say is, and it's a pretty critical thing, but that is that there's another project that was brought to my attention, and I wasn't able to get it actually listed on this agenda, but it's something that you all have talked about before. So I think in that light, we can continue that discussion. That is that the county is preparing a grant application to the Montana History Foundation to hire a consultant to complete the National Register nomination for Lalonde Ranch. This is about Lalonde Ranch, and it is something that the commission has talked about in maybe July and times before that also. There's been, you know, ongoing discussions. Jim knows about it. Jamie's participated pretty heavily around it. And the HPC actually wrote a letter of support to the Board of County Commissioners earlier this year in support of them adopting a resolution to support a strategic framework for the site. You know, and part of that involves the work of getting the material in place to submit for a National Registry nomination. So what the county wants to do now is submit for this grant. It's a, you know, follow-up basically in a way to implement elements from that strategic framework that you've already supported and talked about. Pursuing this grant is consistent with that support and helps to move the nomination process forward. So since you've talked about this site in previous meetings and already voiced support, I'd suggest asking the chair and vice chair to submit a letter of support based on that past discussion. So that leaves you with 2 or 3 items I'd love to hear more from you on, and we'll go from there. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Lavelle. Hey, just before we jump in, just a couple of questions, and maybe it's directed to Jim. Regarding the nomination, what's the deliverable date on that? Do you happen to know?
It's due next, the 15th, next week, but the
Okay.
county would like to have the letter by this Friday if possible. I'm sorry, the 14th next week. I'm sorry.
So that's Tuesday, yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, yeah.
That's what, Thursday?
Yeah. So if no one objects from the board, I don't know what Jamie's availability is, but certainly I'm totally support the idea of the nomination. Jim, would it be possible for you to work up a draft letter that could be signed?
Yes, I think we have a lot of information from the letter that was sent to the county. I think it's just taking some of that information and being brought into a letter that's asked the History Foundation to support this this application.
Okay. Does anybody have
I
any
don't have a
comments?
copy of that letter right now, so it'd probably be good if Lavelle, if you could get that to me or whatever. You've got it, okay, yeah.
I pulled a little bit of background. Jen pulled a little bit of background on it, and we'll find the original, not a PDF, and send it over to you. There, yeah, it's probably a lot of repeat information.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Regarding, was there any other conversation about that? Anyone, any comments from others? In terms of the, what was it? Post-hospital CLG grant, that's in the CLG grant, chair and co-chairs for next month. We are going to have to do that. Somebody's going to have to step up to be the chair, and somebody's going to have to step up to be the co-chair. And I would suggest to you all that the positions are available. So, don't think that Jamie or I are like, chomping at the bit to maintain those positions. There you go. Keep that in mind. Lavelle, there was one other thing on your list that you wanted to talk about.
The HPC interviews. It would be during the day. Yeah.
So we're looking for someone from the committee to represent the HPC on that recruitment. As you all recall, for those who've been around, Jim did that last time and ended up in the hiring of our amazing Amy Shearer, who has now left. I personally would nominate Jim to take on that role again, unless somebody else wants to step up and grab onto it.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. I didn't know if Jamie wanted to be part of that though, so it'd be good to ask her before, because it was, the whole idea was the chair was going to do that last time, and that's why I was selected, and that actually worked out very well. We did several interviews. It didn't take too long. The staff had, with some of us looking at several of the applications, we came up with, I believe, what was it, 4 or 5 interviews, and then we're able to come up with a final person. So it's just a matter of looking through that stuff and then doing those maybe 4 or 5 interviews if there's that many this time. I don't know. Yeah. I think I'd like to ask Jamie first before I, but I'd be glad to get involved if she doesn't or is not available.
All right, that we can coordinate on that and reach out to Jamie and see what her commitment could be there too. Lavelle, do you have any idea in terms of what that commitment level might be?
I'm not. It's hard to know in the kind of pandemic time whether it's better to try to meet and interview many or interview a few, and then if there's challenges with an offer, then you go back into the pool. I was talking to my boss, and she felt like if we could stick to maybe a strong handful, that would be best, and then circle back into it if we needed to. So I'm not sure how many what that would look like in terms of what would be that first pool. one of the things I think we do want to do is have a broad interview panel. I've seen that to be really, really helpful. And I actually just got an email from the Morgan Valiant that Emmy worked with a lot, and he was offering to be a part of the interview grouping too, which I thought was really great. You know, just being able to connect the many things that preservation that office does is would be great to be a part of the interview panel. So I think compared to what we had before, Jim, might be a few more people. So, but besides that, you know, maybe a handful to start with, and then we could see. I don't know.
Okay. Well, if Jamie asks the question, I'll refer her back to you.
Okay.
for more detail.
Everybody, yeah, just check with me offline.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments on the staff report? We'll move on. Board member comments. Any board member comments you'd like to make? Open discussion for the board to make comments. So I have one comment. I wanted to say thank you to Kathy for her efforts in kind of coordinating a goodbye gift to Emmy. I really appreciate that and taking that on. So thank you very much for doing that, thinking of that and doing it.
You are welcome, and thank you all. I haven't met with Emmy yet. We're hoping to do that this weekend. So, and it's just strictly schedules. So hopefully I will see her, and I've got the gift and the card. So thank you all.
Thank you. Yep. Anyone else for announcements?
Just a question for Kathy, since you're in touch with Emmy, what's her schedule? How soon is she going to be leaving to move back?
She's actually working at her new job this week, and so that's why she'll be back this weekend.
I think she doesn't officially move till, is it June 1st around there? Something.
I think so.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking she's here through the spring at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two other comments I have then are, one, I just want to make sure that we send a thank you to Bruce Haraldson for his years on the board and his being a participant on the commission. I really appreciate his insight, and sorry to see him go. So that. And then one other comment I want to make is we're a volunteer board, and Emmy was really good at handing out these forms that we had to fill out for our time commitment, and like, hey, fill out your volunteer time. And honestly, I've lost track of mine. But I would encourage us all to chase down those volunteer time forms and fill them out and then get them into Laval so we can continue to do that, because that's really important in terms of the CLG time and our commitment. That really impacts how that plays into the certified local government and that grant process. So
It actually helps the entire state too, because we and maybe a couple other communities really roll up our sleeves and put in a lot of volunteer time, and they track it for the entire state, and it benefits the whole state when we submit information, because we submit more hours than we need usually. I don't know if that's still the same case, but that's what it was like I know 4 years ago when I was in this transition position before. So we did set up a tracking page, a sheet for everybody, and I have only just started to send this information to Patrick and Leif, and I could send, we could send that out to all of you again as a refresher, so you don't have to dig in your folders and files if you'd like.
yes, please.
Bet. We'll get that to you. I,
That would be good. Excuse me. Didn't we submit in either September or October our hours that went into the state because of a preliminary one? So it's just after that point of time, I believe.
yes.
To put in the hours for any meetings or whatever. So.
Yeah, yeah. So I can't recall if that was mid-year and then we do it again at end year, and end year is March or something like that. But it's twice a year when we collect and we turn in our progress on the application. And then we also have the actual renewal of an application. Doesn't require the hours at this point. It requires us documenting what we plan to do for the next year. And that's the thing we're going to be working on next. Paul, I would also, let's see, I reached out to Patrick and Leif again with some background information. And when you talked about the kinds of things that Emmy usually distributes, I know that what she has done is provided, some of these background code pieces. If there's some other material I can think of, I'll get that ready for you all. But we sent that tracking sheet for volunteer hours as well. And she said she, as I mentioned, she would usually do this hard copy and include some stickers for you. So I don't have any stickers and I don't have any way to, maybe I'll pop some stickers in the mail or something. I don't know. And there, Kathy, you're doing a great job with the form. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far because the last time I wrote something down was July, but to answer Jim's question, I think that might have been the last time, at least that I was available. So, but yeah, I do remember having to turn this in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just all excited I found it, so.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. Are there any other board member comments? I have one other additional one I'd like to just throw out there. As you all know, we were kind of working with Emmy just she'd bring it up in her review or in her staff reports that the Missoula County Public Schools, the admin building, and you recall we wrote that letter we supported the letter that Preserve Historic Missoula had sent to Missoula County Public Schools regarding the admin building. From what I understand, the school district has decided not to award a contract to anyone. They did send out an RFP or an RFQ for a user, and they've decided not to award. They've taken a position, I believe, that they're going to mothball the building. And I think we just need to keep that on our radar. I don't know what their version of mothballing the building would be, but it would encourage our staff to keep an eye out on that, or future HPO to maybe reach out to Missoula County Public Schools on that score. Does anybody else have any information on the building or a status update on that? No? Okay. Yeah, when you think about how the Fort Missoula Hospital was mothballed, or this building, just, and the secretary, I believe the secretary, NPS has guidelines for mothballing buildings. It would be helpful, could be helpful for them to see. So just something to consider there. Okay. Any announcements, news, or upcoming events anybody would like to make? Preservation Month is coming.
This is Jim. Yeah, we need to start thinking about that. We decided last year to just do the legacy awards and really not other awards. We were going to start doing that every other year. I wonder we're going to have to, if we're going to have something for around the May meeting, we're going to need to move ahead with that if we're going to do the awards. But maybe because of everything that's happening and we all can't get out and look at projects and things like that as much as we could before, maybe we want to look at another year. I don't think we're going to be able to do tours or anything like that still this year, but it's going to be a little too soon. At my age, I'm supposed to be in one of the top getting the vaccine, but they're telling me it might be July before I get it. So that's, so we'll have to see what happens here.
Jim, do you know if we would still be able to put up preservation banners along Higgins?
Yes, yes, and the MDA has already asked me if we want to do it again. They still have all the banners. Because there were no events last year, like the film festival and Wildlife Film Festival, all those different groups didn't put up their banners. So we were able to have our banners up for just about 2 months rather than just 1 month that we paid for. They said we might be doing that again. So when we had a good spot, we had the hip strip and then part of the Higgins, North Higgins, as far as banners this last year. So that worked out pretty good. We haven't been able to get those spots very often. So, yeah, especially because May, that's when like the Wildlife Film Festival and some of those all occur during that same month. So, and I can pursue that. I can get the application in, and so we can get those up.
Yeah, that'd be great, I think.
Yeah.
And then I encourage everyone else to,
oh, excuse me.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, if you haven't seen the Eddie's Club photos, go down to North Higgins there. It's really great to see those banners up, and I'd like to see more of those go up in downtown. It's a great project. Yeah.
And of course, the book is available.
Yeah.
Well, I encourage everyone to start thinking about what to do for Preservation Month in a virtual reality sense, or however we plan to do it. I think it's still worth recognizing. Just need to figure out a different way to do it. Without an ATO officer too.
Yeah.
I'll add that to the agenda also for February. So, you know, we will know to pause.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, I just want to mention one thing. The Preserve Montana, the old Montana Preservation Alliance, it's called Preserve Montana now. They have a podcast they're setting up. They have a studio, and they're doing podcasts that are part of their virtual presentations that are really some great stuff coming up. I don't know if you saw the PBS special on the barns. That worked out very well. Plus they had another, Montana PBS did that whole hour on the barns. And then there's a couple podcasts on there too, and they're going to do more podcasts. Raphael and I are going to do one on the Frank Lloyd Wright exhibit, hopefully next month. And those will be going out, but we're going to have to start looking at some of that. We, as A&E Design, we are members of the California Preservation group, statewide group, in order to get their podcasts and their conferences and webinars and everything like that. And there's been some great YouTube and YouTube and webinars that really were very beneficial this last year. So it's something, if things stay the way they are, we may have to start looking at some of that stuff.
Yep, great comment, thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, it's 8:14. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Kent. So I don't think we need a second, but we'll just adjourn at 8:14. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Be safe out there. Jen, thank you for your assistance, and same with you, Laval. All right. See you all next month.